Alright, teachers, I'm going to show you how to make a quick quiz for Google Docs and administer it to your students. I need to begin by getting some test items. We talked about this earlier. I'm going to pretend that I'm a second grade teacher today, even though I teach sixth grade. Whenever I do professional development with sixth grade math, everybody rolls their eyes. So here's some second grade math, and it has to do with the core concept of subtracting two-digit numbers. And we know many common mistakes that can be made by students while they're doing this. This is not an in-depth assessment. It's a quick check to see who kind of gets it and who kind of doesn't, so that we can do some flex groups or small group interventions or something of that nature. So it's not a summative assessment, it's a formative assessment. Now I've gone through all of my various materials. These are some Go Math materials that I have, but anything that you can find is perfectly okay. You can make up your own test items if you want, but for this instance I'm just going to borrow these, and I'm going to use screen capture to do it. So screen capture on this computer is Command Shift 4. That brings up this little crosshair, and I like this question right here, so I'm going to snatch it. Ta-da! And we see it is shown up here as a screenshot, so I can use that later. And I like Windows Shift. I like this one here. Ta-da! And I like this one here because it has some regrouping, and I really want to know if they know how to do that. And I do like this one here because it also has some regrouping. And I like to throw in the story problem because I want to start breaking down that phobia early. But I don't want them to draw, simply because this is a fast, dirty assessment, and I just want some quick data. So, ta-da! I've gathered 5 questions that'll give me a pretty good picture of what they can do. So away with Safari. Now I'm going to open up Google Chrome. Google Docs was developed by Google, and believe it or not, it runs best on their browser. So if you have problems with it, make sure you're using Chrome. Now I'm going to go to Google Drive. I actually have this bookmarked, and here it is, the Google Drive. And we talked about making an account earlier. Here I am. This is Armstrong's 6 account, so this is the common account for all 3 of us teachers who teach together. We all have the username, we all have the passwords. Any of us can make a quiz, any of us can make a form, any of us can modify the data, any of us can look at any of the results at any time. That's what makes it powerful. So I'm going to make a new quiz. Create. When I go to create, you'll notice quiz isn't here. The geeks speak for quizzes form. Ta-da! So here's your Google form. It comes up as untitled form, which I think is a really boring title. So we're going to call it subtracting 2 digits. Okay. And I want the students to see their progress as they're going through, so I'm going to put that there. And let's see, we're going to start up here. The first most important question that you're going to start with is first name, because we want to know who submitted the form. And we don't want that to be a multiple choice question for obvious reasons, because then you'd have to put in like every kid's name. So I'm going to change this to a text type question, so they will answer by typing into a text box. Ta-da! Now this is a thing that I really like down here. You can choose to make a question required. Once you click that box, it will not let them submit it until this question is answered. Don't you wish papers were that way, that you couldn't submit them unless they had a name? Man, that'd be nice. Add another item, and it will default to the last type of item you made. I'm going to make this last name. And again, I want this to be a required question so that nobody can submit it without their first and last name. Now, because 3 different teachers are going to be using this data and 3 different teachers are going to be using this quiz, I want to make sure I know which kids belong to which teacher when we look at that data, so that we can sort it by teacher and find out who they belong to. Now, I don't want that to be a text question. I don't want them to type in their teacher name. So I'm going to instead make this a choose from a list question. Ta-da! And I'll just type in all of our names. Sorensen, Marsing, and Larson. Ta-da! And this is required. Done. Okay. So now I've got 3 questions to start out my form. Those are the first 3 things they're going to do. Now I'm going to start adding actual questions that really truly give me a quick picture of the student's knowledge. So here I go. I want to add an item. And because I'm not making them from scratch, I'm not going to type in any text. I'm going to go ahead and add them as an image. Now you certainly, again, can make them from scratch, but I'm just not going to. So I just click it, drag it, bada bing, bada boom. There's my image. And I'm going to give it a really, really great title. You ready? Call it 1. Anybody want to venture a prediction on what I'm going to call the next one? Yeah, you guessed it. And then I will quickly do the same thing with all 5 test items. Okay, here they are. Now I want to actually go back and answer the questions. Now, this is where the craft comes in, and this is where I would suggest you work together as a team to design it. The power of these questions is in looking at the responses. And if I want a fast, dirty assessment, the easiest way to do it is with a multiple choice question. But the quality of that question is dependent upon the quality of the responses available. So there should be a correct response. There should be a distractor 1, a distractor 2, and a distractor 3. Distractor 1 should highlight one common mistake that you're expecting to see. Distractor 2 should be a different common mistake that you're expecting to see. And distractor 3 should be an answer that is still within reasonable range, but that is completely incorrect, so that you're certain that those poor students are out there without oars at all. So let's look here at number 1. It is 77 having 26 taken away from it. So 7 take away 6 is 1. 7 take away 2 is 5. So the correct answer would be 51. Now I'm going to create some distractors for it. And here's how I'm going to create this. I want to add an item. I want to add a multiple choice question. And I'm going to call it 1. Okay? And I know that one of the answers is going to be 51. And I want it to be required. Done. Now I'm going to move this up. I can just click it and drag it. I'm going to move it up to be directly below 1 so I can look at it. Okay, now I'll edit it. This is the edit button. And I'm going to put in some other responses. Now, option 2, if they were to add this, if they were to subtract the first digit but then add the second digit, they'd come up with 91. Good distractor. If they were to incorrectly count while they're subtracting, then they might conceivably get 41. If they have no idea what they're doing at all, they might get an answer like 23. All 3 of those will yield some excellent information for me. So I'm going to click Done. There it is. So when the students see it, they'll see this big picture, they'll see these answer choices, they'll click the correct one, and then they'll move on. The little red star means they can't move on without answering it. Okay, question number 2. Time to add a new item for question number 2. So I'll come down here and add another item. I want it to be a multiple choice. And I'm going to call it question 2. Done. I'm going to move it up here so that I can play with the options. Now, I cheated and went through earlier and decided what kind of distractors I wanted. So I'm going to put in some good distractors here. See if you can go back later and play with the quiz and decide why my distractors are there. Okay, now I'm here to question 5. Question 5, I want to see if they can do it without any answer choices. So I'm going to leave it as a text response. Just to show that you can do open responses, I am going to make this a required question. And I'm going to click Done. Now down here at the bottom, I can change what it says to the students when they finish. Now I don't want them to submit multiple responses at this time, so I'm going to uncheck all of those boxes. And now here's where it gets really nifty. When I click Send Form here, this is going to give me this URL. And I can copy that, I can make a QR code with it, I can put it in a document, I can put it on the board and have students type it, although that's pretty laborious. If I use Edmodo, I can send it out via Edmodo. If I have Facebook with my students, I can do that. I can email it to them. There's like literally a million ways that I can get this in my students' hands. My favorite way is to actually do a QR code. So I'm going to go ahead and create one of those really quickly. I'm going to make sure I have all that text selected. I'm going to copy it. And I could download it and everything, but I'm just going to use my nifty screen capture again. Ta-da! There it is. That is done. That is how you make an assessment. I am completely finished.